George Floyd. So you remember what happened to George Floyd just about, we're almost at the 1 year anniversary now. And, you know, he was killed by Derek Chauvin. So, you know, that is extremely upsetting. He put his knee on George Floyd's neck, and there were 3 other cops with him just standing around. And, you know, you remember it. I mean, how could you not? And then, of course, you had these protests that erupted because of just how he was brutally killed in the street like that. Right? He's already in handcuffs. He's laying on the ground, and they just choked him to death. For 8 minutes, he had his knee on his neck. So we finally have a verdict now, right? So I'm going to play you the video of the judge reading out the verdict for Derek Chauvin.
Members of the jury, I will now read the verdicts as they will appear in the permanent records of the 4th Judicial District. State of Minnesota, County of Hennepin, District Court, 4th Judicial District. State of Minnesota Plaintiff versus Derek Michael Chauvin, Defendant. Verdict, Count 1. Court File Number 27, CR 20-12646. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to Count 1, unintentional second-degree murder while committing a felony, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April 2021 at 1:44 p.m. Signed, Juror Foreperson, Juror Number 19. Same caption, verdict Count 2. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to Count 2, third-degree murder, perpetrating an eminently dangerous act, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April 2021 at 1:45 p.m. Signed by Jury Foreperson, Juror Number 19. Same caption, verdict Count 3. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to Count 3, second-degree manslaughter, culpable negligence, creating an unreasonable risk, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April 2021 at 1:45 p.m. Jury Foreperson 019.
Right. So he's been found guilty of all 3 charges. And, you know, he could face up to 75 years in prison, right? So they've given the verdict now, but they haven't actually sentenced him yet. So that's yet to come. Now, you know, I want to show you some of the reactions to the sentencing, notably from President Biden and Kamala Harris. Okay, so let's take a look at that.
A measure of justice isn't the same as equal justice. This verdict brings us a step closer, and the fact is, we still have work to do. We still must reform the system. Last summer, together with Senator Cory Booker and Representative Karen Bass, I introduced the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. This bill would hold law enforcement accountable and help build trust between law enforcement and our communities. This bill is part of George Floyd's legacy. The President and I will continue to urge the Senate to pass this legislation, not as a panacea for every problem, but as a start. This work is long overdue. America has a long history of systemic racism. Black Americans, and Black men in particular, have been treated throughout the course of our history as less than human. Black men are fathers and brothers and sons and uncles and grandfathers and friends and neighbors. Their lives must be valued in our education system, in our healthcare system, in our housing system, in our economic system, in our criminal justice system, in our nation. Full stop.
Okay, so, I mean, I think you already know what I'm going to say. Do you want me to play Joe Biden as well? You want to hear what he said? Yalla, I'm going to play it.
Today, a jury in Minnesota found former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin guilty on all counts in the murder of George Floyd last May. It was a murder in the full light of day, and it ripped the blinders off for the whole world to see. The systemic racism the Vice President just referred to. The systemic racism is a stain on our nation's soul. The knee on the neck of justice for Black Americans. Profound fear and trauma. The pain, the exhaustion that Black and brown Americans experience every single day. Today's verdict is a step forward. I just spoke with the governor of Minnesota, who thanked me for the close work with his team. I also spoke with George Floyd's family again. A remarkable family of extraordinary courage. Nothing can ever bring their brother, their father back. But this can be a giant step forward in the march toward justice in America. The guilty verdict does not bring back George. But through the family's pain, they're finding purpose. So George's legacy will not be just about his death, but about what we must do in his memory. I can't breathe. I can't breathe.
What are you doing? What is wrong with this guy? Look, dude, if you had no clue who Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were, I would understand why you would think, oh wow, these are very nice people. They sound very serious. Yeah, that's great that they're talking about, you know, criminal justice reform and fixing racial inequality. The problem is that Joe Biden wrote the 1994 crime bill, right? He's a huge proponent of the war on drugs, right? Which has led to, I mean, devastating foreign policy, right? But also lots of money for the prison industrial complex, right? Oh, they love him. They love him. The 3 strikes, the harsher sentencing in the crime bill, you know, throwing people's lives away. I mean, this guy, he's turned the justice system that he talks about into a cash cow for private prisons. That's what he's done. And of course, he's catered to tons of other industries. But we're gonna stay focused on this for now. And Kamala Harris, I mean, she's a cop. She's a cop, right? The top cop, San Francisco. And you want me, you know, she dude, she made sure that someone who is, you know, effectively exonerated by the evidence, yes, she wanted to keep him on death row, man. She wanted to keep Black men in jail so they could be used as, you know, modern slaves. You know, in the United States, prisons rent out their prisoners. They use them as cheap labor. We covered this, right? You had, for example, you know, someone will go on strike, workers will go on strike, and then a company will come and just use prisoners and pay them like a few cents a day. It's akin to modern slavery. It's what it is. And she's fine with that. These 2 people, right? Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, I'm going to fucking lose it. Like, I'm so angry with this shit. They want to stand here after spending 40 years in government, just, you know, creating a slave labor and creating money for the prison industrial complex. And they want to come here and pretend like they care about justice. They don't give a shit. They don't give a shit. What is this platitude salad? It gets worse, man. It gets worse. You know, I've been saving this for the end because if you thought this was bad enough, I mean, just take a look, man, at this video. I'm gonna lose my shit, honestly. So this is, again, after the verdict. You got Nancy Pelosi standing in front of the Congressional Black Caucus. Listen to her. Listen to what she says.
Thank you, George Floyd, for sacrificing your life for justice, for being there to call out to your mom. How heartbreaking was that? Call out for your mom. I can't breathe. But because of you and because of thousands, millions of people around the world who came out for justice, your name will always be synonymous with justice. Thank you, George.
What is wrong with you? I've watched this like 5 times already, and I can't believe it's real. Look at how she's mocking him. Dude, George Floyd did not sacrifice himself. He was murdered. You know, a sacrifice is voluntary. You volunteer to sacrifice yourself. You jump on a grenade or something. I don't know. George Floyd was killed in the street. He was choked to death. That's not a sacrifice. He was murdered. You're talking after the verdict where Chauvin is convicted for what? For murder and manslaughter. And then she's mocking him for crying out for his mother and that he can't breathe. What? How sick? How sick is Pelosi? What is wrong with this woman? What is that? What is this? And no one says anything. No one says a word. You know, last year when they started getting on their knees and they put on this like kente cloth, right? And they made a photo op out of it. Do you remember that? And Pelosi was right in the front and she's wearing the kente cloth and she's like kneeling like that. And they did a minute of silence for George Floyd. This is worse. Like I wasn't, you know, I was already like that. Well, you know, you're just doing that as a photo op. You don't actually care. And no, this is worse. They still managed to top that and insult this guy's memory even more, right? Like he shouldn't have to be dead for you to reform the justice system, because that's what she's saying. Like, oh, he sacrificed himself for justice. Bitch, you are a fucking legislator. You're at the head of the Democratic Party. How many people have to die before you wake up? Are you saying he sacrificed himself for you? What are you saying? What does that mean? She's lost the plot. She's lost the plot, and I know that she's lying, and I know that she's disingenuous, because this woman, just like Joe Biden, just like Kamala Harris, they have spent their whole careers, man, their entire careers in Washington, D.C., looking the other way at the, you know, in regards to the prison industrial complex, looking the other way when it comes to torture, the CIA torturing people, looking the other way when it comes to police brutality. Remember, Black Lives Matter started under Obama. It's nothing new. Racism is nothing new. Police brutality, state violence is nothing new. What have they been doing for the last decades? I mean, if you're going to talk about I can't breathe, because she invoked that phrase, that's not just George Floyd who said that. I specifically remember Eric Gardner saying that when they were choking him to death for selling loose cigarettes or whatever it was. I don't care what the reason is. It was still wrong. They choked him to death. You had 6 officers who choked him to death. None of them went to jail. When was that? That's the last decade. That's under Obama. His sacrifice wasn't good enough for you? Like, if we're going with your twisted logic? Oh my God, I can't believe this. Like, this is not cringe. This is beyond cringe. This is just flat out insulting. It's provocative. Now, again, I don't know how people let them get away with this. And by the way, I want to point out something to you, because this is from 2015, a leaked memo. Okay? Take a look at what this says. All right? So this reportedly came from Nancy Pelosi's computer. Okay? And what does it say? It says that they should not offer support for Black Lives Matter. Okay? Here, it's a memorandum to DCCC staff. Okay? So they're saying here that presidential candidates, actually, hold on, I have a better copy over here. There we go. So they're saying presidential candidates have struggled to respond to tactics of the Black Lives Matter movement. Okay? And then they explain what it is. And then look what they say at the end. Tactics. They say meet with local activists. If approached by Black Lives Matter activists, campaign staff should offer to meet with local activists. Invited Black Lives Matter attendees should be limited. Please aim for personal or small group meetings. Listen to their concerns. Don't offer support for concrete policy positions. Frontline district staff should meet with activists. So they're telling them basically, you know, just appease them, but don't actually do anything, don't actually offer any real support. Now, Nancy Pelosi denies that this came from her computer, right? Her office back in the day released a statement saying that, oh, this is not real. It didn't come from my computer. So that's up to you. I'll leave this up to you. I don't think that this is dependent on one memo, right? Because if there was a track record of actually doing stuff about this, about state violence, about police brutality, about the prison industrial complex, about racism, then this memo would not mean shit. You could easily look at that and say, no, that's fake, because look at her behavior, her voting, her legislating. It doesn't match with this. Problem is, it does match. Do you understand? It matches very much. And even right now, they're saying, oh, thank you, George Floyd. We've named a bill after you, right? After the state murdered you in the street. We've named a bill after you. And you remember they did this last year. So it got through the House last year, and then it didn't get through the Senate. Now, again, I think in March, so just last month, they got it through the House again. And now the question is, will they get this bill through the Senate? So let me pull it up for you. All right, here it is. So this is the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act of 2020. Okay, and it's quite extensive. I'm just going to give you the, a brief summary of it. So, because it's basically divided into 3 different parts. Okay. And, in the first part, they talk about police accountability, reforming qualified immunity, so that you can actually sue police, which you can't do under qualified immunity. Yeah, that's a thing. And then they talk about how things would progress in court, accreditation of agencies. And then in part two, they get to police transparency through data. So they want to establish a national police registry for misconduct, right? So, in the United States, if you're, for example, working as a cop and then you get fired for any reason, whatever the reason is, you can just go to another police department and they will employ you. It's not like if you're a lawyer or if you're a doctor and you lose your license, you can't practice anymore. No, here it's fine. You can, maybe murder someone or involved in extortion, corruption. Oh, it's okay. You're fired. Just go to another police department. No worries. So they're talking about establishing a national registry for police misconduct. Okay. And then after that, in the third part, they talk about improving training. This is in regards to racial profiling, basically training officers to make sure that, I mean, it's quite vague, right? But basically, it's about training them not to racially profile or ethnically profile people, and also about body cameras. And they say things like also about chokeholds, because if you look at how George Floyd was killed, Chauvin put his knee on his neck. He cut the oxygen supply from the 2 arteries to his brain. He killed him. He suffocated him. And they're saying that police departments, they need to invest in the body cameras with their own money. And if they don't stop using chokeholds and if they don't stop putting their knees on people's necks, then they'll be cut off from state funding. Okay? So that's what's suggested in the bill. Now, look, let's get something straight, man. When they're laying out all of these things in this bill, and they're saying that you can only use you can't use reasonable force anymore. It's not about, was the force reasonable? Was it necessary? So now there's a distinction. You have to de-escalate first, and as a last measure, you can use deadly force. And I'm reading that and I'm thinking, how was this not already a thing? Like, who on earth decided that you should escalate to begin with? What kind of policing is that? That's not policing. I'm reading, I'm like, this wasn't already mandated that you de-escalate? They're not trained this way? I mean, it's kind of a rhetorical question, right? So a lot of these things, I'm reading them and I'm just astonished. I'm astonished that these things were not already, mandatory. Because forgive me for being naive. I thought some of them were, but they were breaking them. They weren't actually abiding by them. No, turns out a lot of this stuff wasn't even mandated by law. Now, the thing is that they're going to make sure that this doesn't get passed. I know this, this, because they couldn't even get the $15 minimum wage passed, right? They couldn't even do the $2,000 checks without lying. Oh no, it's brought down to $1,400. They're not even delivering on the campaign promises, right? I I don't see this passing at all. And you have Republicans, of course, they're coming in and saying, well, qualified immunity, if we repeal that, we're not okay with that. Right. So it's not just about body cameras, although they are making a fuss about that too. I think in Oregon. So anyway, that's on the state level, but I'm talking about the fact that they're not going to be able to get this passed through one reason or another. And it's not because, they can't actually do it. They just don't want to. They don't want to. Joe Biden, if you look at his behavior with the $15 minimum wage, they blamed this on Joe Manchin. He didn't even call Joe Manchin. He didn't even pick up the phone to lobby the senator, right? He's president of the United States, and he's saying that, a lone senator from West Virginia is more powerful than him. He didn't even bother calling him. He didn't even bother putting pressure on him. Nothing. So you think if Joe Biden doesn't pressure Joe Manchin, that he's going to go and pressure Republicans now? They're all Republicans anyway, right? They're all Republicans anyway. They just go by different names. But you get what I'm saying. You get what I'm saying. There will be no lobbying effort on Joe Biden's behalf. Rather on the citizenry's behalf. But there will be no lobbying on his part towards Republicans. I can assure you. Right. So they're coming out here and pretending that, this is a step forward for justice. Look, finally, we have justice for George Floyd. Well, first of all, he shouldn't have been killed in the first place. What were you doing before that? And second of all, this is not enough. It's not enough. Right. So I think AOC correctly pointed out that it's accountability, but it's not justice. It's accountability for one case, but it's not actual justice. And I really have a hard time believing that these two people, a jailer, Kamala Harris, the jailer, and Joe Biden, the Mr. Crime Bill, right, Mr. Prison Industrial Complex, Mr. War on Drugs, you really think these people who have done nothing but, again, it's not even serving law enforcement. They've just been serving corporations and who use law enforcement, right? You think they're really going to go and upset, cause an upset about this? No way. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So, I mean, a lot of these things, they look great. They're not getting passed, though. That's the problem. And you have to ask yourself, how much can Joe Biden actually do via executive order that he's not doing, right? How much lobbying can he do that he's not doing? And I'm wondering also one thing is that all the people that are celebrating, that are, in the streets, let me show you, this is from Status Quo. This is their exclusive reporting, right? They do a lot of on the ground stuff. Let me just show you people celebrating after the verdict, right? Right, they're chanting all three counts because he got convicted on all three counts, and you have tons of people celebrating. And I mean, I understand, but I feel like these politicians, they're just paying lip service. They're just saying nice things like they always do, but they're not actually going to reform anything. They're not going to meet any of the demands. I mean, just look at how they're acting before, and you have to consider. Look how many millions of people protested to get this verdict. I wasn't even sure that it was going to happen. You remember I sat here last year and I told you I wouldn't be surprised if Chauvin is not convicted for anything, right? I was legitimately not sure. I thought that there's a chance that he's let off scot-free. I'm sure many of you also had that fear, had that suspicion that it might happen, because if you look at what happened with Ahmaud Arbery, for example, the people who shot him, I think one of them was a retired cop, so he knew people in the local police department. For months, they weren't arrested. Nothing. It's by accident that the footage came out, and then they were finally arrested, right? If you look at Jacob Blake, the guy who shot him in Kenosha, no charges, and he's back on the job. He's not even fired, right? If you look at Eric Garner, the NYPD, the 6 NYPD police who killed him, no one went to jail. The only person who went to jail is the person who took the video. So you have so many cases of no justice. So I was fully expecting, they're just going to do it again. They're going to wait until the protests die down, and then they'll just let him off scot-free, right? So I was also surprised that he actually got the conviction. Sentencing, we don't know yet, but you shouldn't have to protest for a year and have so many millions of people coming out just to get, a drop of accountability or justice. That's not a mark. That's not an indication of a functioning judiciary or a government. That's actually the mark of a judiciary that is not functional, of a lack of accountability. That's what it's an indication of. That's very worrying, right? It's very worrying. And it's not just George Floyd, it's all the other deaths that I just mentioned to you. Just at the day that they were giving the verdict, you know what happened? Here, let me show you. This is from Ohio. 15-year-old girl got shot. She actually called the police. She called the police because she felt that she was in danger, and they come, and of course they don't know how to do anything. They don't know how to de-escalate. They don't know what they just shoot, right? Shoot first, ask questions later. That's the same day. That's the same day. Makia Bryant is her name, right? In Columbus, in Ohio. I mean, what am I supposed to say, man? What am I supposed to say? And another interesting thing that I would point out, you know how they're saying in the George Floyd bill that they want to pass, they're saying that, police departments that continue to use chokeholds, that continue to put their knees on people's necks, they will be cut off from funding. And I'm thinking to myself, well, hold on a second. Israel does that to Palestinians every day, all the time. And that's paid for by the United States. Are you going to also threaten them with that same exact condition? I think that's a reasonable question worth asking, right? Because already at the time when George Floyd was killed, people were saying, hey, look, that's a technique that the Israelis use. And, they have a partnership program where you have some law enforcement agencies in the United States that train with the Israelis. And then, of course, the Israelis are saying, no, that's not true. You're lying. We never taught them this, whatever. Well, that's in the best case scenario that you didn't teach it to the Americans. You're still doing it to Palestinians. You're still using that on Palestinians. And, here, I'm just going to show you this. And again, it's upsetting, but it's necessary, right? So here, this is from September. Look, the Israelis do this all the time. You see, putting his knee on his neck. The same thing, and those green uniforms. That's the Israeli army. Those are the Israeli occupation forces. So we know for a fact they get paid by the United States, right? The United States gives the Israelis $3.8 billion in military aid every year. It goes to the military. That's not border police. That's not Shin Bet. No, that's the military. It's an occupation. Are you also going to condition aid to Israel because of that? Just like you threatened to condition aid to your police departments? I mean, you shouldn't be conditioning. You should fucking cut it off, right? Because that's like the mildest aspect of it, right? That's not taking into consideration the chemical weapons that they use on Palestinians, the hundreds of kids that they have locked up in jails, the fact that they're just bulldozing people's homes and taking them over for, white colonizers from Europe and elsewhere. The residential bombings, I mean, Jesus Christ, it goes on and on, man. It's 73 years of occupation. So, you want to come here and tell me that that they actually care about this behavior? No, I don't buy it. Unfortunately, I really don't buy it. So, I'm looking at this this George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, and yeah, they got a lot of nice things in there. Does it go far enough? I don't know. I don't think so. Are they actually going to get it done? Like this is the bare minimum, and they're not even going to get it done. I can assure you. This is the bare minimum, and they probably most likely will not get it done. It won't pass, right? What a shame, honestly. And they come here and they just insult this man's memory again. What was that from Nancy Pelosi? Has she lost her goddamn mind? Has she lost her goddamn mind? That was insulting. That was insulting. I'm so angry at all this, honestly. Here, I'm going to read you a tweet from Danny Haifong. So he says that this is worse than bare minimum. Since 2014, we've known that roughly a quarter of all police murders are Black Americans, yet the Department of Justice refuses to even keep data of police misconduct. An investigation into one police department is an attempt at placation, not justice. Right? Because this is after announcement they're going to investigate the Minneapolis Police Department where, Chauvin was employed with the other three. So, I mean, it's not even a quarter-ass measure. It's less than that. And it's very unfortunate. You got all these millions of people protesting, and, it's... No, I'm not saying it was pointless. On the contrary, it should be kept up. All right, direct action, general strike, absolutely. We have to watch out because this is how they try to, blunt, co-opt movements like that, right? I mean, depending on how much of a threat you are to the government, if you're, for example, the Black Panthers, they will actually send the FBI after you. They will infiltrate you, right? They will come and just flat out shoot you in your home. Which is not very much different from what we're seeing here. But they will actually employ federal agencies to come after you because your liberation movement, Black liberation, poses a threat. Feminists, communists, they infiltrated these groups. They tried to dismantle them. And if you actually look at the last couple of years, they've been treating Black Lives Matter as like a terrorist threat domestically. That's not a joke. That's not a joke. That's how they've been treating it. And that speaks volumes because, again, it's not something new. They've been doing this for decades, since the Cold War. This is how the government treats liberation movements. So if you think they're just going to roll over and give people what they want, no, not even the bare minimum. That's how corrupt these people are. They made careers off of jailing people. What do you expect? It's disgusting. So, I mean, it's again, just to summarize, it's great that Chauvin got convicted for all 3 counts. I mean, is that it though? Are they just going to come here like Nancy Pelosi and give these insulting speeches and then nothing happens? No, that's unacceptable. That's unacceptable.